Hi, today we're going to make this app together. This is an app where I can put in the title of any book and it will generate a summary of that book using AI. It uses the OpenAI API behind the scenes to make a request as you'd make a prompt to ChatGPT to ask to summarize the book. It has a front end where the user enters the book title, which is then passed on to the back end, where it's added with a prompt and an API key, which then uses the OpenAI API to generate the summary. We're going to build this with low code, meaning coding as little as possible and reusing as much as possible. This is our application. We've got a front end, a back end, and we have an OpenAI account. The user sees the front end. That's where they enter the title of the book and they click summarize. That makes a request to the back end. The back end receives that request and it combines the prompt, could you please summarize this book, along with the title of the book, and it sends that to OpenAI along with our API key. OpenAI generates the text, it returns the summary, which is received by the backend, and then the backend returns that summary to the front end where it can be displayed. We're going to use Codesphere for the backend, and we're going to use GitWit for the front end. It should be really fast to make. So to start out, I have a Git repository which includes the most important code that you need to start making requests to the OpenAI API. It's written in JavaScript and uses Node.js. We can just copy this repository to our own GitHub account, and we just have to choose a name to give it. So I'm going to call this Book Summarizer and create the repository. Then I'm going to copy the URL of the new repository I made, and I'm going to go to Codesphere. I'm going to create a new workspace. Codesphere already has access to my GitHub account, and I'm going to paste that URL into Codesphere. I'm going to start with a free instance and click Create. Now Codesphere has loaded all of the code from my GitHub repository. Let's have a look at server.js, which is the main file. Here we are including Express. Express is a very simple web server based off of JavaScript. And we have defined two API endpoints. So API/generate text and API/generate image. In this case, we can actually just comment out the image generation since we're not going to use that feature. Generate text uses an endpoint that we've defined as text endpoint, which comes from the route/text.js file. So let's open that up and let's open text.js and let's have a look at this file. So this file uses the OpenAI official library, and we've defined up here the model that we want to use, GPT 3.5. If we want, we could change this to GPT 4. And we've created a new client that we're going to use, which is basically just a shortcut for making HTTP API requests to the OpenAI server. And then we're going to put together a request in this chat format, and we're going to get the text out of the chat response. One thing that we would like to change here is the input to this API call is just prompt. We'd like to change that to be title, and when we're sending our request to OpenAI, I want to add a prompt, so I'd like to say, please give me a summary of the book, and then here I'm just going to add title. So that sort of combines the input from the user with the prompt that I want, and then that's going to pass this whole thing on to OpenAI along with our OpenAI API key. So we still have to add that, and we'll get that by going to platform.openai.com, and I'll create a new key. And back on Codesphere, I'll go to Setup, Environment Variables, and I'll add a new variable, and I'll call it exactly OpenAI API key, and I'll paste in the value that I just got from OpenAI. So now that that's saved, I can go to the CI pipeline, and this is how we just start the web server. So first we need to click Run, which is going to install any of the packages, any of the dependencies that our server needs. So that ran successfully, and so we can go to run, click run, and if we read the logs here, we can see the server is running. Now here it says localhost 3000, but Codesphere is forwarding that to the public internet, and we can see that page by clicking here, open deployment. So it's working, and we can test the endpoint by copying this URL, opening a new terminal window, and then using curl. So that works. Now let's test the specific endpoint. And so I believe that was API generate text title equals, let's summarize Harry Potter, and then we wait. Cool. So what we get back from the server that we've deployed on Codesphere is this JSON response that includes one key value pair where text is the summary that we requested. So that's good. We can use this in our front end. To make our front end, I'm going to go to GitWit. And GitWit is just a very simple tool that you can use to quickly prototype front-end applications. I'll sign into my account. And here I can just write a prompt, and that's going to generate front-end code for me. So here I'd like to say, add a form where the user can enter the title of a book. And that's just going to start writing JavaScript and React code as best as it can to complete my request. So here we have a form, and I can type in Harry Potter. But of course, that's not going to do anything as we didn't tell it what else to do. Now, what we wanted to do is wanted to make a request to the backend, this backend URL that we've just set up. And the easiest way to do that will just be to copy this curl command and create a new prompt and say, when the user clicks submit, send a request to, and then here I'll just put in the exact curl command, and here I'll write insert title. Here we can really just write, it's not too strict how we have to write it like this, and show the results of data.text, because that's how the JSON is formatted, as a paragraph below the form. So that's just going to add this code, and it's going to add a code that creates a request using, here it's using Axios, which is just a standard JavaScript library for making web requests. And once the request is finished, it's setting text to the response data.text. And down below, it's inserted a paragraph where that text should show up. So yeah, let's give it a shot. Harry Potter. Cool. So that works. We could probably just make it look a bit cooler. So make the page have a clean and responsive layout. Yeah, I like the way that that works. And if we want to use this, we can click this launch button. And this is how it looks. So let's put in another book, 1984, submit. There you go. And I can share this with anyone by using this share button and making the project public. What else I can do is I can download the code, and that's going to give me the full JavaScript code that I need to run this on any hosted service, like Codesphere. So yeah, that's just one example of an app that you can make quite quickly using OpenAI's APIs, but I hope it gives you lots of ideas for your own projects. If you have an interesting idea for a project, let me know in the comments, and have fun.